Welcome back everyone. The M1 MacBook Pros have actually been out for not quite a year yet, but it's been around that time, within a couple of months. But I kind of want to see how this MacBook's been holding up, I guess almost a year later, in 2021. Now here's the thing about the M1 MacBook Pro. I bought it when it first came out, I returned it, and I actually rebought it, earlier this year. And what I can tell you is that it's been a pretty good ride. I've been using the M1 MacBook Pro as my main machine for several months now, and I'm a fan of it. I think they're great MacBooks. I think they have a lot of capability. I don't think they're perfect, and I'm going to explain a couple issues I've had here and there with these specific devices. But I think as a whole, they're pretty solid MacBooks. And for the price tag, if you want to go pick this thing up, they're really not crazy expensive for the type of capability that you're getting, especially if you're somebody who uses a lot of, Apple native apps, things like, Safari, Final Cut Pro, all these other apps, Logic Pro, those type of things that Apple makes. And the main reason for that is because Apple made the chipset. When you have a developer that essentially goes ahead and made both of the hardware and the software, that really changes up a lot of different things. I mean, when you look at the iPhones, for example, Apple did a really good job at optimizing the software to the hardware. You don't really need a crazy amount of, RAM or chipset or performance, whatever, in order to have a really good performance. And that is exactly the same thing with the MacBook, with the M1 chipset. It's on par with about the A series. I've already compared the M1 iPad Pro versus the A14 chip, and I was getting pretty similar performance, which is great. Now with the M1 MacBook Pro, you have that 13-inch panel, which still looks very good. Touch ID, same keyboard, the exterior still looks great. And my biggest downfall with this MacBook, and one of the things that I really don't like about it, is the port selection. Specifically, there's only 2 USB port models. So you get the 2 USB Type-C port, and it doesn't matter if you get the more expensive M1 MacBook Pro or the cheapest one, or if you even get the M1 MacBook Air. They all have the same amount of, USB Type-C ports in them, which is probably just a dumb thing. I hate it so much. And like I said, with even the last generation of MacBooks, you had the capability of getting more USB-C ports for the more higher end model that you bought. In this specific case, you only get those 2 USB-C ports, and I guess that's what Apple tried to do. They did it on purpose. They knew what they were doing. They wanted a reason for people to go and update to these MacBooks eventually, and I think it's a pretty solid thing. I mean, it's kind of funny that they did this because it's such a money grab, especially if these next MacBooks end up bringing an SD card. That's going to be an even crazier reason for me to go and upgrade. Even though I already own an M1 MacBook Pro, if Apple were to bring in a model with 4 USB Type-C ports, I would probably upgrade. But if they were to bring a model with 1 SD card slot with the 2 USB Type-C ports, I would 100% upgrade. Even if they don't add more USB Type-C ports, I just rely on SD cards like crazy, and that would be a worthwhile change for me to go and upgrade. So that was really the main problem I had with the body. Everything else, I don't mind the panel. I think that the panel looks good. The touch bar, I don't really care too much about it. The massive trackpad, I don't really mind, and the keyboard is pretty decent. The only thing that really bothers me is the USB-C ports. Other than that, I think it's totally okay. Now, on the battery life side, before I get too much into anything else, the battery life of this specific MacBook is crazy. I've had a tremendous battery life on this thing. I would use this thing for, an hour or 2 on end, and I would only be down to 90% or 85% or something, which is crazy because I would be exporting videos, uploading videos, editing things, whatever I would have to write. These things definitely get the job done, and this makes me super comfortable of even recommending this type of MacBook for a wide array of different uses. I am not I wouldn't consider myself a heavy user, but the only heavy thing I do is editing a bunch of videos at one time, and that is the thing that I do pretty much every single day, day in and day out. And this MacBook does a tremendous job at this. I haven't been using a separate device, for my main, everything I do is on this, MacBook essentially, and that is the most important thing that I do in a day. And this MacBook, the battery life wise, does a great job at anything I do with it. I can take this MacBook with me and I don't even have to think about the battery life, which is really good. Unlike some older MacBooks I've had, that was pretty much the case. Now on top of this, when you have a MacBook like the M1 MacBook Pro, the performance of this thing is going to be top tier. It's a really good performing MacBook. I've had very good performance on this thing, and the main thing I'm comparing this to is my older iMac that I had and the older MacBook that I had, but I've owned almost every single MacBook as well, even the 16-inch one, and this MacBook is a great powerhouse of a machine. One of the main things I looked at when purchasing a new MacBook was the fans, and this was one thing I didn't want to buy a MacBook for over an iMac, because when I record a lot of audio, I didn't want the MacBook fans to ramp up like crazy and all of that, because then you'd be able to hear it in the background. My iMac never had that issue, but my MacBooks always had that issue, and with my 16-inch MacBook, it was like that like crazy, which was so annoying. In this specific case with my M1 MacBook Pro, that is not the case. Sometimes the fans do ramp up, but that only happens, and this is the craziest issue, and I don't have an explanation for it, but sometimes when I dock my MacBook up to my monitor, so I have my LG Ultrafine 5K display, that's very good and I love it, but when I dock up my monitor to my specific MacBook, almost every single time I undock my MacBook, I have some sort of glitch, I have some sort of issue, and I'm not talking about when I first open it. I'm talking about from when I open it to the whole entire duration of me using that MacBook until I restart the machine. It just glitches up like crazy. And I don't know why this happens. I've been talking about this for a long period of time, since probably the first week I bought it, and it's just a very annoying thing. I can't put my finger on what specifically is the issue. I would probably say it's something with the change of monitor. Maybe it thinks I'm doing dual monitor or something like that, but I mean, it doesn't. But the UI is still the same. It's not like I am having like the cursor issue where it's not on the screen or something. Like, it's a fully working MacBook, but the fans ramp up like crazy. It glitches up a lot, so I'm not too sure what's going on there. But other than that, I've had a great time for the performance side. Like I mentioned, I edit a lot of videos. I make music sometimes, but not really anymore. And this thing does a great job at it. The only complaints, like I said, are the USB Type-C ports. I wish there were more ports on this thing, or even if there was one port on one side and another port on the other side. I think that would be really cool, because sometimes my dongles, they don't situate properly side by side to one another. So that can be a little bit of an annoyance to some people. But to me personally, I actually think it's, so that may be okay for some people, but for me, it kind of is an annoyance overall. But I think overall, when I look at this whole entire MacBook, and even when I look at the M1 MacBook Air, I am really happy about what Apple was able to do with this specific MacBook. When people first bought it and they were like reviewing it and they were like overhyping it like crazy, I was like, okay, they're probably overhyping it. I don't think it's perfect. And looking at it now, that is 100% the case. I think everyone kind of overhyped it, but it's a really solid, machine. Like, this would be a MacBook that I would buy today, and then I would like go next week, or if like this MacBook broke, I would 100% feel comfortable buying another one of these same exact MacBooks, and I think that's a very important thing. When you get a device and it's in really good condition and you like it a lot, and you're not even always thinking about like, oh, but what's the next thing I can upgrade to? This thing is pretty much the top tier MacBook you can buy, and it makes me comfortable knowing that I don't have to worry about like the future of this device or whatever, because this thing has that M1 chipset. This thing is going to be future-proofed probably for many more years, and I will probably, like I said before, if you get this MacBook today or next year or the year after, you'll probably end up upgrading your MacBook before these things even end up getting done with support. Now, me personally, if Apple were to go ahead and drop a MacBook, tomorrow with an SD card or whatever, I would definitely purchase it. I think that would definitely be worth the money. But other than that, I think this MacBook is still completely worth it. It's a very good MacBook, and as long as you don't care about, like the SD card issue and whatever, then I honestly think you'd probably be good to go for the most part. So that's pretty much it. If you guys have any other questions or anything, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.